there friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. So the Russians have begun the preparation before a massive missile attack that is going to take place within the next days. During the previous 24 hours, both the Russians and the Ukrainians were attacking each other, and telling the truth, the previous attack carried out by Ukrainians was also one of the biggest. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation stated that between the 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. of the 4th of January of 2026, the Russians managed to destroy 41 drones that were launched deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation. Also, the Russians emphasized that between 1 p.m. and 8 p.m. the Russians managed to bring down 253 drones of the armed forces of Ukraine, which means just during probably less than half a day, the Russians destroyed around 300 drones that were launched by Ukrainians. Furthermore, the Russians emphasized that over the past week, air defense forces have shot down more than 1,500 Ukrainian drones over Russian territory. So the Ukrainians, as you can see, are intensifying their attacks deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation. And of course, the Russians would like to know where is the production of these drones. Anyway, the Russians, for the first time since the end of 2025, struck back. During the previous night, we received lots of reports and updates about attacks, and this map was published by pro-Ukrainian sources in the morning of the 5th of January of 2026, and here we can see the approximate routes of Russian attacks. As you can see, the Russians were mainly attacking the Kiev region, the Chernihiv region, and the Sumy region. So basically, the Russians were attacking the launching sites of the armored forces of Ukraine that Ukrainians used to launch drones deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation. The Russians were using drones and the Russians were using missiles. More precisely, the Russians, according to information we have and according to media, were using hypersonic missiles. Later, pro-Ukrainian sources reported that during the previous nights, the Russians launched 174 targets, air vehicles, and 137 of them were brought down by the armored forces of Ukraine. So this is not the biggest attack, but this is the preparation. Most likely, the Russians during the next days will continue bombing and attacking the territory of Ukraine with missiles and drones with the purpose to soften Ukraine's air defense system, and then the Russians will launch their biggest attack ever. Furthermore, we received this very interesting video published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see the Garand drone of the Russian production. And as you can see, according to this video, during the first seconds of this video, we can see that anti-aircraft equipment was installed on this drone. So this is anti-aircraft equipment, this is it, and Ukrainians are warning their, let's say, pilots and forces to be very careful when they try to bring down another Russian Garand drone, because now the Russians have possibilities and capabilities to destroy Ukraine's helicopters or aircrafts that are trying to destroy Russia's drones that are flying above the territory of Ukraine. So as you can see, the Russians continue improving their Garand drones, and this is a very interesting situation. Now Ukrainians will be probably more careful with their air defense work and with use of their helicopters and aircrafts, which means that the Russians will be able to hit more targets. So this is the situation. We are waiting for additional updates. We believe in coming days we will receive some. Now let's discuss the situation in Ukraine. According to information we have, this information was confirmed by several independent sources. Ukrainian journalist, for example, Stanislav Rachinsky, who previously worked in the SBU press service, reported that SBU head Vasily Malyuk has submitted a letter of resignation. Furthermore, according to unconfirmed reports, the head of the security service of Ukraine, Vasily Malyuk, has been dismissed from his post. Malyuk was personally responsible for carrying out sabotage and different types of attacks on the territory of Russia. So telling the truth, it was unexpected. Telling the truth, I'm not even sure what exactly Vasily Malyuk is going to do, but once again, his dismissal, first of all, is connected with the situation that he failed his mission to control the anti-corruption agencies through Ukraine. That was his mission, to control them and to provide Zelensky and his inner circle about the current state status of this or that investigation. But as we know, as we understand, and according to media, he failed this mission, so that is why Zelensky decided to dismiss him. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of updates, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction where the Russians continue their offensive operation. During the previous 12 hours, several pro-Russian sources stated that as a result of clashes, the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to improve their positions, as you can see, according to the changes, significantly in the direction of the settlement by the name of Novoyakovlivka. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. This is the end of the 4th of January, and this is the beginning of 5th of January. So according to this update, the Russians managed to establish complete control over this biggest dense network of the fortifications. And according to these geolocations that were also published this morning, we can say that Russians currently are concentrated and focused to take these 3 lines also under complete control and to get as close as possible to the settlement of Novoboykovska. So the Russians are advancing in this area, and the Russians continue moving further in the eastern direction towards the city by the name of Orekhov. As for the eastern Zaporozhye direction, during the previous 12 hours, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians were bombing and attacking the city of Turnovata significantly. The Ukrainian sources are saying that more than 40 bombs were launched by Russians on the territory of the city, which means that the Russians are entering its final and decisive phase of the battle for the settlement. Ukrainians managed to stabilize the situation in this region with introducing of additional forces. The Russians were forced to stop their offensive operation due to these activities from the Ukrainian side, but the Russians finished regrouping, the weather most likely became better, and now the Russians relaunched their offensive operation. The clashes in this area are about to renew. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very important updates. First of all, the map has been adjusted, and as you can see, these adjustments are very interesting. First of all, we recolored back the northern part of the city of Pokrovsk along the Olympiyskaya Street. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates according to different mappers. So this information was provided by neutral mappers. So basically, we have colored back the contested area that used to be the territory under complete Russian control, but being not confirmed that Ukrainians managed to recapture these territories, and we colored back this area, and we expanded the gray zone further in the northern direction. As for the pro-Ukrainian sources, they still show all these territories as a gray zone, but despite the fact that there is still a very huge zone according to pro-Ukrainian sources, they also shortened this gray zone in Russian favor. During the previous 12 hours, pro-Ukrainian sources added additional territories in the northwestern part of the city of Mirnograd and the complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. The Russians continue advancing through the fields to the north of the Olympiyskaya Street in the direction of the settlements of Shevchenka and this industrial complex. This is the landfill of Zaporozhskaya mine. So the Russians are advancing in this direction with the purpose to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this area. This is a very important part of the front line because Ukrainians still have possibilities to use these corridors, this gap, to attack the city of Rodinska. And as you can see, the map around the city of Rodinska and in the city itself has been adjusted. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. First of all, this situation was confirmed by a neutral mapper. According to his report, Ukrainians re-entered the city of Rodinska and managed to establish control over the central and the western parts of the settlement. Furthermore, this video published by pro-Ukrainian sources also confirm additional progress on the ground. So this video was published this morning or yesterday in the evening, and here we can see dozens of Ukraine's flags that were raised through the central part of the settlement of Rodinska. So we have added just one icon because most of the flags haven't been geolocated, but they're from there. We have some sources that provided some approximate coordinates. We are waiting for additional information, and then we will add additional flags in the central part. Anyway, we have a report and we have a confirmation, and we have a winter video during the winter period of time, not during autumn period of time, that Ukrainians re-entered the settlement of Rodinska and now they are trying to dig in deeper. So despite the fact that the Russians continue their offensive operation in the direction of Dobropol and Belitska, there are still reports and possibilities from Ukrainian side to counterattack with the purpose to stabilize the situation in their favor. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Slaviansk direction where the Russians intensified their offensive operation. During the previous 12 hours, small changes on the ground were recorded around the settlement of Sveta-Pokrovska. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. This is the end of the 3rd of January, this is the end of the 4th of January, and this is the beginning of 5th of January. The Russians continue offensive operation towards the settlement by the name of Riznikovka, at least from 3 directions, from the southeast, from the east, and from the northeast, and the Russians are getting closer and closer to the final part of the settlement itself. Furthermore, we have a video that confirms additional progress on the ground. Based on this video, we adjusted the map in Russian favor. Here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians in fields along 3 lines, right exactly this area. Based on the video, we have adjusted the map. We have colored this small tree line and this small forest around the settlement of Sveta-Pokrovsk and the complete control of the armed force of the Russian Federation. Furthermore, don't forget that the Russians are advancing along MO3 roads during the previous night. Also, additional changes on the ground were recorded and different mappers reported about additional progress. At the same time, we continue receiving reports about clashes along the Seversky Donets River. Pro-Ukrainian sources are saying that logistics is dying on the Limansky direction, crossing are destroyed by caps, and their restoration is almost impossible due to a constant work of strike wings. The number of Russia's drones and wings is incredible. Transport has almost no chance of movement, and infantry is forced to move on foot. So that was stated by pro-Ukrainian sources, and according to information we have currently, the main clashes are taking place on the line between Liman, Dibrova, and the settlement by the name of Ozerna. So these are the changes on the ground. According to pro-neutral mappers, armed forces of Ukraine counter-attacked in the area of Dibrova and restored control over the southern part. Furthermore, the Russians continue offensive operation around the village of Ozerna, and the Russians are about to establish complete control over this territory. The Russians, according to the latest report, managed to secure this stronghold in the central part of the settlement, and the Russians began advancing in the direction of TO514 road with the purpose to outflank the settlement of Liman and to establish complete physical control over the road and over the logistics of the city of Liman. If Russians are able to cut this road physically, this is going to be already a complete encirclement of the city of Liman without any chances for evacuation. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation around the city of Kupiansk. There are still very heavy clashes. During the previous 12 hours, some few videos were published from the area of the settlements of Petropavlovka, Podol, Kurilovka. We haven't added them on map, but we received first proofs that indeed the Russians have control over this territory. We will discuss this during and before the next video. As for the northern directions, during the previous 12 hours, we haven't received anything special. Just several neutral mappers reported and confirmed that indeed during the previous days, the Russians crossed the border between Ukraine and the Russian Federation between the settlements of Kharkovka and Komarovka. The Ukrainians counter-attacked. The Russians, according to information we have, managed to dig in deeper around Komarovka, and the Russians were forced to fall back from the village of Kharkivka. So there is some activity in this area, and most likely Russians will intensify their attacks in this direction with the purpose to take under complete control the launching site that Ukrainians used to attack deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation. And that's it for the short video. Military with Samurai channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.